Chair, you have a live mic.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Commissioner meeting. This could be fun and exciting today. It could be the things we have to talk about the most, or the prayer and the pledge and the recognitions. With that, we'll do it.
Commissioners, will begin with our invocation by Pastor Tim Reed from Fairway Bible Church. He'll be followed with the Pledge of Allegiance by Army Lieutenant Colonel Brian Markle. He served in the Vietnam War and the Persian Gulf War.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, this morning at the start of a new day, we pause as we come before you. Lord, just to tell you that we love you and that we need you, and we recognize our dependence upon you. Father, this morning we pray for our land. We pray for our city, our county, our country, dear God, that you would unite us in purpose, in spirit. Father, that we would be the people that you want us to be. God, I thank you for the commissioners here this morning. Lord, I pray that you would give them wisdom beyond themselves as they make the decisions that need to be made. And Lord, we just ask that Naples would continue to be a place that would flourish and prosper, Father, under the guidance of not only our county government, but Father, as our dependence upon you as well. And so, Lord, we look to you this day and ask that you would receive all the glory, and we pray it in the name of your precious Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good job.
Commissioners' agenda changes for June 25th, 2024. First, we have the correct placement of item 16H1. It actually should have been item 16B9. This is a recommendation to award invitation to bid number 24-8219 Forest Lakes Municipal Service Taxing Unit Grounds Maintenance to Ground Zero Landscaping Services, Inc. as the primary vendor and A&M Property Maintenance, LLC as a secondary vendor, and authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreements. This is being properly placed at staff's request. Do have one agenda note. We had planned to bring the library visitation information back to the board at this meeting. However, we're still doing some work on those numbers, so we will be back at a future meeting to give you that update. We do have court reporter breaks scheduled for 10:30 and again at 2:50 if needed. And with that, no further changes on the change sheet. County Attorney.
No changes, ma'am. Thank you.
Commissioners, any changes to the agenda? Or ex parte?
Changes in ex parte, Commissioner Cotwall.
No changes, and I have no ex parte.
Commissioner Saunders.
I have no changes and no ex parte as well, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McDaniel.
No changes nor any ex parte, sir.
Mr. Leo Castro.
Same. No changes, no ex parte.
Me as well. No changes, no ex parte.
With that, if I could get a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll move so.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3, awards and recognitions. Let's begin with our 20-year attendees. Item 3A1A, 20 years, is German Hernandez from Road Maintenance. Congratulations.
There's a small pop-up. No, I'm just kidding.
Our next 20-year attendee is Liz Soriano from Public Transit and Neighborhood Enhancement. Congratulations. 20 years, Wallace Tyler Horst, wastewater.
Congratulations, son. Thanks. Thank you.
Moving on to item 3A2, our 25-year attendees. We have 25 years, Susan Petter, libraries.
Thank you.
25 years in
Yes.
quiet.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Finally, item 3A3, 30-year attendees. We have 1, Denise McMahon, libraries. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 4, proclamations. Item 4A is a proclamation designating July 2024 as Parks and Recreation Month in Collier County, to be accepted by James Hanrahan and other distinguished guests. Congratulations.
Here comes those distinguished guests.
Good morning.
Good morning, y'all.
Parks today.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How you
Good
doing?
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good to
dear.
see you.
Likewise.
Good morning.
Oh, there we go. Good morning. Thank you.
You need us to do 2 rows? Good job. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if we could get a motion to accept the proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5A. This is a presentation by the Lee County Electric Cooperative Storm Season Preparedness by Alan Ruth, Incident Commander. Welcome.
Good morning. My name's Alan Ruth. I'm the Director of Business Continuity and also the Incident Commander for LCEC. On behalf of our members, our employees, our Board of Directors, I'd like to thank you this morning for giving us an opportunity to tell you about LCEC. It is a privilege and an honor to serve the communities of Immokalee, Ave Maria, portions of Golden Gate, Jerome, Copeland, Carnstown, Ochopee, Everglades City, Chokoloskee, Royal Hammock, Port of the Isles, Goodland, and Marco Island. Oop. LCEC is one of 16 electric co-ops in the state of Florida. We're the southernmost with the exception of Key West. And we're a member also of FECA. FECA is the Florida Electric Co-op Association. They represent all the co-ops throughout the state of Florida. LCEC, we serve 6 counties in the area. We have approximately 245,000, probably now, by the time this presentation was updated, it's closer to 250,000 members. We have 9,000 miles of line. The breakdowns included, that's 26 substations, and we're growing by probably 2 or 3 substations a year just because of the amount of growth we have. And we have approximately 430 employees. We have a pretty robust vegetation management schedule. Our transmission system, which consists of 179 miles of 138 kVA. In Collier County, we do a reclaim of about 10 miles a year. That's to bring the right-of-way back to its normal 60-foot easement that we have. And then we do visual inspections, and then we also do any of the corrections that we have. Our distribution system, we have a 3-year cycle on the main feeders and a 5-year cycle on the single-phase laterals. We also have palm tree removals, customer requests, and outage investigations. And we manage about 3,900 miles of distribution. Pole inspections, this is another part of our maintenance program. We have approximately 2,200 transmission structures. We do a visual inspection on those, and we do a 2-year climbing schedule. 1 year we do to the north system, the second year we do the south system. And then we also do a visual inspection of the entire system. The distribution system, we have about 168,000 distribution poles, and we do an annual inspection of 16,000, about 10% of the poles on the system. And then we target about 2,500 that we change out on an annual basis. It's an ongoing maintenance program that we have that will go on for the foreseeable future. And basically the ratio of poles that we have is about 150,000 wood, about 17,000 concrete, and then there's some other combinations of poles. Our service territory is identified here in yellow, and you can see that the vast majority of it actually resides in Collier County. A lot of it on the east side, that's pretty rural, that's out in that area with relatively few customer counts, but we do actually go all the way out to the Broward County toll booth on I-75, and then down to 11 Mile Road, or just a little east of that, on the southeast side of Collier County. Storm prep and restoration. So on an annual basis, we do drills. We also participate with FECA at their statewide drills that they had. I had the honor last year of attending FP&L's drill over on the other coast. We have mutual aid agreements with not only FECA, but also our contract vendors. Every year we do an update, so we have the storm restoration contracts in place. And we have good relationships with municipalities across the state. And Hurricane Ian, Duke Energy came down and gave us a hand, and FP&L, they helped us out with some substation expertise and materials and equipment. We also go through the process of looking at our material issues or material levels throughout the course of going into storm season. As everybody hears about the supply chain issues that we have, so that we got to pay special attention to the materials. Communications with employees and our partners. We communicate when an event is coming closer onto our system to keep everybody on the same page as to exactly what we're doing. We do the prep so everybody has a role in the restoration process and they know what they need to do. We also contact our vendors and suppliers for not only materials but also resources. Communications with our stakeholders. In the government area, the EOCs, we staff the Collier County, the Lee County, the Cape Coral EOC centers, and also at request we're at Sanibel and some of the other cities as well, Everglades cities being one of those. Resource requirements. So this is where everything builds upon itself. So we have a storm estimator that we look at, and we determine what we believe the category of the storm and the impact of the system is going to be, and then we start building with personnel. So we have predetermined amounts of personnel that we're going to bring into the system, And then that builds on the equipment, and then the lodging, the food, the fuel, the materials, and everything that goes into it. So a few years ago, probably 5 years ago, when we would pull the trigger to say, okay, bring these resources in, it was about a $1 to $2 million decision. Today, it's about a $10 million decision. We're fortunate, being a not-for-profit cooperative, we do qualify for FEMA reimbursement, but much as the county, if you go through and you pull the trigger on an event and then a disaster isn't declared, then you're going to have to roll that out and absorb those costs. So we're very cognizant of those decisions that we have to make. The restoration process that we have in place, first thing you got to have is source power. We do not generate electricity. We buy our power from FP&L. And so during Hurricane Ian, the east side of our service territory, which was Lehigh and Immokalee, we did not lose source power. We actually had circuits that stayed in service out in those communities. The north system and the south system, we lost source power. So we had to wait until FP&L was able to restore source power to those transmission lines that come into the switching stations. Then we take service from there. The next step in the process is to restore the LCEC transmission, then the substation, then the main feeders. Everything being equal, then we concentrate on the key accounts, which is government buildings, the shelters, the hospitals, the water plants, things of that nature. And then large customer accounts, small customer accounts, and then all the way down to the individual services. This is a snapshot, actually, of the materials that we used during Hurricane Ian. So Hurricane Irma was in 2017, which was approximately, I think it was 5 years prior to Hurricane Ian. And to put things into perspective, that was a bad storm. And it came up and it really impacted, I know, the southern half of our territory, Collier County, and down through the Keys. And in that event, we changed out about 750 transformers. In Hurricane Ian, it was about 1,950. Same thing on the poles. We changed out about 1,000 poles in Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Ian was about 3,000. So everything was times 3 for that event. So some of the lessons learned that came out of the storm, when we always do a debrief after a storm, and we incorporate those lessons into the plans as we move forward, and that's what we drill on. And we make adjustments to them. So the first thing that we realized during Hurricane Ian was after Hurricane Irma, the plan that we had in place was to bring in 750 external resources to be able to manage a storm of that magnitude. Hurricane Ian, our high water mark, we brought in about 2,500. So we quickly had to revamp the plan and be able to accommodate that influx of that many additional personnel. Something else that was new to us that we had not experienced in the past was the impact on the employees. 25% of our employees had severe damage to their properties and their homes. So that's something that we had to adjust and put into the plan to be able to manage that. And to our employees' credit, they didn't miss a beat. They were there. They were having to manage the home front, or their spouses were managing the home front, and they were there working with us every day. Customer outreach. There was areas that we did an exceptional job of that, and it paid off. It did really well. We got out in the community before the storm and after the storm. There were other areas we probably didn't do as good a job as we could have, and so we're going to incorporate those lessons and move out into the other areas within the community. Utilization of contractors. E&O, Electrical Operations, they've always used contractors. I mean, right now we've probably got about 200 line contractors on the system, probably another 100, 120 vegetation management. We also extended it out to the base camp model. So we always housed our personnel in hotels and motels when we would bring them in. We didn't count on the damage that we saw to those accommodations during Hurricane Ian. And then also there was a lot of assistance that was coming into the area, and they commandeered a lot of those facilities that were left. So we rapidly had to move over to the base camp model. And the base camp model is basically if you get a footprint of property, you can bring in this housing. They house them, they feed them, they clothe them, they do everything that they need to do. Basically turnkey, they come in and take care of them. Also trucking, we ran out of CDL qualified CDL drivers, so we had to bring in contractors for that, and also additional warehouse personnel. And then last was the storm. This was the 24th storm that I'd managed in my career with LCEC. 5 of them have been major hurricanes, and every time we saw a hurricane, we always said, boy, that was a hurricane. And now we can say we really saw a hurricane. And so what we learned from that is, I mean, literally Hurricane Charlie came in and hit us in 2004. Wind speeds were almost identical. The difference was the size of the eye wall. They were probably about 4 times bigger, Ian was, but it literally made landfall within 300 yards of each other. We did not see a storm surge in Hurricane Charlie to speak of. Hurricane Irma did see a storm surge down in Everglades City, Chokoloskee, but not so much on Marco Island and on the North System. It didn't. But the one thing that I will say is going into this, I personally was not a believer of the storm surge. I thought it was all hype, and I can tell you now it's wrong, and it's real. And, you know, when they're projecting these storms under the right circumstance, they can be devastating. You know, to our fellow islands up in Lee County, I saw places on Sanibel that probably put 15, 16 feet of water across it. So it's pretty devastating. And with that, that concludes my presentation, unless anyone has any questions for me.
Commissioner Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for what you do. LCEC supports a big chunk of my district, so I wanted to just say a couple things. First, I wanted to highlight a couple things that you said that I really appreciate. Citizens, I don't think sometimes understand source power, because I know during Hurricane Ian, I got a lot of emails. We have no power on our street, and we haven't seen an LCEC truck at all. And the reality was, your street's fine, the source power is dead. And then, of course, you know, you get an email, we never saw a truck, but all of a sudden our power came back. So some of education is important. People understand how they get electricity. It's not just the transformer on the pole. And if it blows up, you lose power. And if it doesn't blow up, then everything's fine. There's a lot of other things. And also your comment about how Ian was 3 times as worse. The takeaway there is water can be worse than wind. I mean, because obviously Irma had the severe winds. But just in a nutshell, we had a meeting here recently where we talked budget, and Dan Summers was here from our Emergency Operations Center. And one thing that I had said is I really gave a solid shout out to LCEC. You guys not only manned the Emergency Operations Center, but you did it with a decision maker, you know, somebody that I could turn to who didn't just have the LCEC yellow pages, which is what I had, but could actually make a phone call to a leadership person and then come back to me and say, thanks, they're going to be out there in 20 minutes, or they're not going to be out there, or, you know, I could actually speak to my constituents, eloquently, rather than just, oh, I don't know anything about it. Let me see if I can find out. And it's like, well, I can do that. So I hope that continues, because a lot of other significant players in the county, some were in the EOC, some weren't. You guys were there religiously. And then, you know, I specifically mentioned Tricia Dorn. You know, she's the person that I went to, her phone, it rang one time and she answered it, and you know, the constant feedback and whatnot was very important. The one question I have for you, and you may not know the answer, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what's our transformer inventory look like right now? I mean, I realize we just had a major storm, but I just remember during Ian, the big issue was, yes, a transformer did blow up on Street X, and that's why that street has no power, but we have transformers that blew up everywhere, and we don't have 2,000 transformers sitting in a warehouse. And oh, by the way, there's tons of other counties that also need transformers, so it's a high value item. Between Ian and now, have you been able to amass at least a small to medium size inventory of transformers? It seems like that was the high value item that could either fix or not fix something a little quicker if it wasn't a source power issue. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Yeah, the supply chain, as you had mentioned, you know, it's been an ongoing issue ever since COVID. The inventory levels that we have, we've been able to keep up with the shipments that we've had. We do stock a bit of a safety stock for storms and things of that nature. But I'll tell you, going into Hurricane Ian, that was one of my biggest concerns. And to the credit of our purchasing department and all the vendors that we do business with and the industry as a whole, Everybody else got shut down and they shipped everything to us, and we did not have any issues at all with materials during Hurricane Ian, which was pretty remarkable because I thought that was going to be our Achilles heel, and it didn't turn out. Now, and that was a major storm that we were able to manage. Now, I don't know if there was capacity, if there was two major storms in the state, or if they had happened somewhere else. You know, that's to be seen. But I will tell you that if we have one, everybody steps up and they help out. So that's less of a concern this year than it was back in 2020.
So are we sitting on a pretty decent inventory of, I mean, you don't have a crystal ball, but, having just had a major storm and knowing that you probably emptied out most of the warehouse, during Ian, you've been able to, replenish the stocks to, the best of your ability and
Yes, sir.
feel like you're going into this storm season, at least, not with empty shelves.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the kind words and the feedback.
Yes, sir. I assume Trish is still working for y'all, right? Yeah. Oh, she was over here waving at me, and I was just like, I gave you a good shout out at the last meeting, Trish. I don't know if you picked up on it. So there'll be a little extra in your envelope from LCEC this month, I hope. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And I did catch business continuity, a little play on words. I liked it.
So Trish, you're waving at me, and I was just like trying to put two and two and recognize you like quick enough, I think. Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 7, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda.
I have 2 registered speakers at this time. Katie Tardif will be followed by Joseph Garino.
You can still call me Katie. This is a tough one, guys, because I'm going to address some of the comments that were made in the last meeting. And I like most of you quite a lot, and I respect most of you quite a lot. And I still have to say that you had a lot of nerve. You had a lot of nerve saying 2 things in particular that you said. I'm not God-fearing. God knows what's in your hearts. God doesn't need you invoking your faith as a defense. She, he, or androgynous God is, in my view, a spirit present there for all of us. But I don't want to go down the religion path. I just want to say, using religion as a defense in regards to an issue that's a public policy, public health issue, is a misuse of your faith. And your faith can't be a defense against the votes that you took 2 weeks ago. I had the feeling sometimes that some of you were taking one for your leader. And I admire that in a lot of circumstances, but this isn't one. You don't throw your constituents under the bus. And you know you did. Because the last thing I said when I spoke 2 weeks ago was that you cannot say you are taking care of those born that would otherwise be unborn entities. Entity is such a cold word. Bodies, when you know there is no local, city, county, state, federal system that is as yet taking care of those people. Does this mean, oh, I see what's happening, okay. Everyone who is anyone knows that in your hearts, all of you, more or less, are like most of us, doing the best you can. And I believe you're well-intentioned. But you have got to, if you're going to take the position you took on that reproductive rights, reproductive freedom message, you have got to meaningfully and substantially step up to the plate and take care of those people.
Thank you, Katie.
One PS, there's an excellent program running at a school here in
Ma'am, your
Collier
time's up.
County.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Joseph Guarino.
Good morning. How are you today? I guess this is more for District 5. I think that's you, Mr. McDaniel. Is that correct? All right. So I got the right guy. I live out in the Estates, and I emailed, I believe, somebody, Christina, from your office. Okay. The commercial vehicles that are in the Estates, there's no ordinance, there's no rules. They could do whatever they want. I could be woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning by the dump trucks, the 18-wheelers, and you're telling me the Estates doesn't fall under Collier County for rules. And it's in the email. How do you want to address that?
I can address it now, or we can address it after.
We could do both.
Okay. The fellow that lives next door to you is an owner-operator of that dump truck.
Of a commercial trucking company in the residential area.
He owns that dump truck, and he is starting it and driving it to work every single day, sir.
So there's no time refrain. 4 in the morning is okay. So I can ride my ATV at 2 in the morning, shoot my guns at 3 in the morning. That's what you're telling me?
Shoot your guns at 3 in the morning. You can't ride your ATV
Why?
off of your private property.
Why?
Because you're trespassing.
It's on my property.
And I'm going to say this with all due respect. This is not a time for us to be having this discussion. Right
This is
now,
a public meeting, isn't it?
yes, sir.
So what's the difference?
I am sharing with you, this is a time for us to not have this discussion. You are here to express your concerns.
Which I did.
I have addressed those concerns. You're not satisfied.
You didn't address
with
them. You just basically said there's nothing we can do. It doesn't fall under our rules.
So, having said that, this period of time right now is for you to address that.
Okay, what about the public
not a
nuisance laws?
debate.
Public nuisance laws. The smoke, the vibration, EPA rules about dropping gas, oil, shaking my house. I can't enjoy my quality of life. How does that work?
I've already
That's
said.
exactly the same response I got in emails, the same response I'm getting now.
Sir, this is not a time for argument. This is a time for you to express
I
your
know what I
views.
gotta do.
Thank you.
That was our final speaker for public comment.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 10. Item 10A is a recommendation to approve a status update for the Golden Gate Golf Course housing project with Rural Neighborhoods, Inc. and Renaissance Hall at Old Course LLC. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, I put this on the agenda because as we started to approach the end of June, I was concerned that there may be an issue involving the financing for the Renaissance project. I think, Mr. Chairman, your comment at that meeting that if Mr. Kirk needed another extension, that it would cost him $100,000 in a non-refundable deposit, I think that might have gotten his attention.
It was just a suggestion.
Oh, I know. And I'm just kidding about it getting his attention because he's been working diligently to try to get this project going. Mr. Kirk is here today. His message is, and I want him to deliver it, but he's got some good news today in reference to the financing. And we have an email from the county attorney that basically confirms that the financing condition in the lease has been met, and so there is no need for another extension. So I want Mr. Kirk to kind of fill us in on where we are with that.
Good morning. Steve Kirk with Rural Neighborhoods. I'm pleased to inform the board that thank you for the previous extension. HUD was able to act. Their National Loan Committee approved the financing for the project on June 18th unanimously, and that resulted in their issuance of a June 20th firm commitment for their insurance of the first mortgage. That commitment is for approximately $58 million, and that is the piece that was missing. This was followed yesterday by Prudential PGIM Real Estate, who followed that up with basically updating and issuing their commitment for that same loan. And I believe I provided by email copies of each of those to each of you as commissioners as well. So we are pleased to have the financing in place to build the project. Our next step is to move to what is essentially a simultaneous closing of all the financing for the project. And so that simultaneous closing, we estimate to take approximately 75 days. Our commitment from Prudential and HUD requires us to close by September 20th of 2024. And then immediately thereafter, we would issue a notice to proceed to DeAngelis Diamond. Happy to take any questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask just one quick question. I think Mr. French is in the audience, if I'm not mistaken.
He stepped outside to talk.
He's out there
Okay.
talking to that fellow about
The only reason I mention that is I think that you're getting close to the point where you're going to need actually need building permits.
Oh, we do, and we're going to require permits for closing, and we, as a result of a meeting we had yesterday, believe that Cormac Giblin and Mr. French will work with us to assist and try to expedite that.
Mr. French, I was just talking about the issuance of some permits for him going forward and the review, and I think you're aware of the time frame of all of this. So I guess the question is, do you anticipate any delays in permit reviews and that sort of thing? Are you getting the information that you need for all of that?
Thank you. For the record, Jamie French with Growth Management. I would tell you, Commissioners, not unlike any other permit that comes in, the quality of the work will determine, of course, the review outcome. But we're currently turning around those type of permits within probably 2-3 weeks at the most. But those are on very complicated projects. On this one, I would tell you is that it may be all of 10 days.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
I'm good. My questions are for you. I think I heard, and I just would like you to repeat it if you could, that you have a loan commitment from Prudential, but do you have the final commitment from HUD? Isn't
Yes.
HUD also one of your lenders?
Yes, so if it hasn't been crystal clear, let me certainly try to help. PGIM Real Estate, which is a division of Prudential, is the first mortgage lender of the approximately $58 million. In order for them to make their loan, they require HUD to, in a sense, ratify that loan and agree to insure it. So HUD is not a direct lender in this project, but it has been their firm commitment that has made Prudential's money contingent. And so with the HUD firm issuance of their insurance commitment on the 20th, that allowed Prudential to recommit their money on the 24th letter. So they work hand in hand.
Okay. And closing, you said, was estimated by the end of September. Did I hear that?
Yes, we're hoping to be approximately 75 days. Obviously, next week's going to be an inefficient week to get started with the holiday. But we are required by Prudential and HUD to close by September 20th.
Okay. And then last but not least, when we were here before, the clerk was asking for some documentation having to do with the other contributors to the transaction, the trust, the community foundation. Have you had an opportunity to get those documents to her?
It's a very long list that she's requesting, and so I can't say for certain that we have given her all the things that she wants. Just to be clear in regards to both the Moorings Foundation and the Collier Community Foundation, we have a grant agreement with them. It is one page. We consider it binding. I think many of us find, both the clerk and ourselves, that it's short and not particularly lengthy. We've talked with the two foundations to try to put a little bit more meat into it. But that said, they consider it binding, and they have advanced, for example, $1 million of their $10 million to us based on that particular award letter. In addition to that, we have award letters from several grant sources from the county, which we've discussed before. and the county is executing those grant agreements. So we look at these issues as basically those things that are basically conditions to close. And so I think that we'll continue to progress on that and provide both the clerk and the manager's office additional information.
The question that has regularly come up is you just now referred to those as grants from those foundations.
And from and particularly to the county, yes.
From the county. But there's also an agreement for repayment of those funds over a period of time, assuming the prospectus numbers are met. And I think that was the deviation, if you will, from the loan commitment that calls it a grant in relationship to a pro forma that shows a repayment of those funds.
Well, that is true for both the government funds from local government as well as the foundation. So from the local government, for example, we do have one SHIP loan, which is a forgivable loan that is in the form of a mortgage and a land use restrictive agreement. But we have 3 other grants that are related to state and local fiscal resource funds, and they are termed grants as the Treasury indicated. Nonetheless, we have an income sharing agreement with the county. Similarly, the monies from the 2 foundations are not constructed as loans, and the funds that come back as the income sharing agreement are not necessarily repayment of either the county's grant or of the foundation's grant. It's an income sharing on the project, having both groups, the foundations and the county, being partners.
So the misconception, if I can call it that, without it being a misconception, is the references over here is a grant. That's what it is. And in the event that the income parameters that are put forth in your prospectus are met, there's an opportunity for income sharing as a separate contribution to those foundations that have assisted over here.
That's true for both the foundation and county government, and it may be, I don't know what the phrase is, a difference without, I mean, one could look at it in both ways. It is confusing. But I think you expressed it well.
Thank you.
Mr. Cowell.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
I guess it's on the lines of Commissioner McDaniel was speaking of the conditions, the 1 through 6 on the HUD form, are the ones that, said aren't secured so far, I guess was the grant. And there is an actual money loan from HUD, not just a secured.
HUD is not a direct lender. Prudential is the direct lender. HUD is the insurer.
Thought in the conditions 1 through 6, HUD CPED grant.
Oh yes, there is a HUD CP, what is called a HUD EDI, Economic Development Initiative, and a community project fund. That is an earmark from Congressman Diaz-Balart, and that grant is in place and executed.
So that's already been secured because it says unsecured on the HUD paperwork.
I'm sorry, which number? I have it with me.
It's the first one of the 6 conditions. And each one of the conditions say unsecured yet. Do you have to meet those within the next 55 days? And does the HUD paperwork go away after that?
If you could just tell me the page number, I'm sorry.
Page 6 of 27 of the
okay.
HUD paperwork you sent me. This is additional funding sources that have to be met within the next 60 days, but 5 days has already expired.
Yeah, if you could just, I'm sorry, if you could just if you could read the sentence with secured and unsecured?
Every one of them, all 6. In parentheses, say unsecured, 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 unsecured.
Yes, those are unsecured loans, meaning they're not they're unsecured grants. They're not secured by real estate.
The HUD's not, but I mean HUD's
not uncommitted. It's unsecured. So, in a sense, those grant funds are not secured by a mortgage.
Okay, so they're not part of the guarantee then. HUD's guarantee.
HUD does not guarantee those funds. They're simply guaranteeing the $58 million. And these are secondary financing. And I believe the reference to unsecured on page 6 refers to the fact that they are grant income coming in and not secured by a mortgage.
Okay. So one of the other provisions was in your prudential paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
It refers to, I can't remember the exact line, I guess I can find it. that you have to have a current survey done on the real property. And you can't be older than 120 days
Correct.
old. Do you have to obtain another one now?
No, we have a survey
Date was
that's
back in
current. We
2023 was the last one done.
we have a survey currently in progress by Grady Minor.
So you started in the process of that. And does it have to also be complete in the next 55 days?
Well, it will be complete in the next 55 years. I mean, it's actually, we've been sharing title exceptions and looking at easements with the county attorney's office concurrent to this.
And does HUD have their own underwriter?
Yes, they do.
And you have to meet their,
We met theirs. That was part of the process that took place over the past month. When we were here a month ago, the senior underwriter from HUD had expressed the fact that they had reviewed all of the other credit underwriting except their environmental review had not been completed. And that's why we all sought for the extension. It was then in early June reviewed by the regional Atlanta office and their loan committee, and then went to the National Loan Committee between, that ended on June 18th. And so the National Loan Committee completed that underwriting. So HUD's underwriting is complete.
so HUD's underwriting complete?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then you got a secured loan, you got a secured rate, everything at this point?
Yes, sir.
So you're a little closer than you were before?
We are, I think, substantially closer than before, but nonetheless, closing, as you said, has its conditions to meet, and that is the task for the.
Typically, the underwriter wants that, so he can say it's a good loan and legal loan.
And they have done that.
All right. No more questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner LaCastro.
Steve, just real quick, I know you've been, putting out a lot of fires and answering a lot of, questions from county staff and even from us, some of them after the fact and even last minute. But I know what would be helpful to me and maybe my fellow commissioners as well is, it's great to know the current status right now. Hey, we check this box, we check that. We don't have to worry about this. I'd like to see a little bit of a look ahead, a proposed timeline, and not something to hold your feet to the fire as much because I know it's a fluid process, but we don't want to get off the track too much. But just in my head, and it could be something you send to all of us, like you've been sending us valuable information, which is, I was questioned about this, it's untrue, here's the answer. So all that was helpful to separate rumor from fact. But I'd like to see something at some point that in an organized fashion, this is your number one priority. We've got 1,000 number ones. And so in my folder that has your name on it, I'd like to put a document in there that I can refer to and track what are the milestones that are coming up, if everything was possible and everything worked. And like I said, it could be, I don't want it to be too loose, but something that would be helpful to give us visibility on, what's coming up, what milestone are you trying to hit, what do you think a realistic timeline is, a couple of sub-bullets could be, but here's a few landmines that we don't control, that we're waiting on if it's something by HUD or the state of Florida or something like that, to just package it a little bit better with your feedback. And like I said, you don't necessarily need to do it at the podium now, but you sent what I thought were some very valuable answers and documents that, I looked over and we all did. And it begged some questions. Commissioner Kowal just asked some really good ones as well. But I'd like to see something with a little bit more visibility when you have a chance to maybe put something together. You don't have to build us a watch, but, as I always say, I don't need you to build me a watch. Just tell me the time. But it would be helpful to see. This is a big project with a lot of eyes on it. And I think it'd be nice to have some sort of, reference document that you continue to update for us that shows us some of the big nuggets and how they're moving or not moving or where we need to be concerned. Because I feel like I have a lot of little parts and pieces, but I don't have a playbook.
I'll be happy to summarize the timetable for you this week and get that information out to you. I think we suggested, obviously, we have one deadline that's very important, which is September 20th and closing. Clearly, to move towards construction, our construction contract with DeAngelis Diamond will be 24 months. If you read through the documents, you can see the Prudential's pretty harsh if we don't complete in 24 months. But we'll be happy to provide that timeline.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Steve, I'm proud of you. I'm praying for you to sleep good at night.
Well, I'm in a folder with his, so that means I have a lot of emails.
You got 5 plates in the air with only 2 to throw them, so you're doing good. So I appreciate the update.
Well, again, I think, look, I think that all of us, when we read these commitment letters and we see the numbers of pages of conditions, it gives all of us pause. Certainly, we have a legal team that's redressing these. But we and our lender is putting substantial dollars. This is not a small loan. This is a very significant loan. And so there are very significant parameters. Much of what we see in the HUD conditions are boilerplate that we expected. They relate to the environmental conditions of the site, and so they were anticipated. But clearly, thank you for your support as a board, and thank you for your individual support and questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to ask her one more quick question.
Sure.
Because I appreciate you giving us a good timeline and, you know, breaking this down, because I know just enough to get in trouble. But I noticed in Prudential speaks a lot of the construction loan versus the mortgage. And there's a real finite date when one ends, one starts. I mean,
Yeah.
can you just kind of enlighten me
Yes.
on what exactly that language pertains to? And
So in this instance, Prudential is both a construction lender and the permanent source of financing. And so unlike certain projects in which you have a separate construction lender and a permanent lender steps in at the end of construction and takes over the permanent loan, Prudential is playing both roles.
one house.
And so they are providing us a 24-month construction loan. And at the end of 24 months of construction, they anticipate the project to be completed, and they will convert that to a 40-year mortgage. And so that will be done internally, which eliminates some risk of lenders disagreeing with each other. But it's a hard date that they've basically put there to convert that construction to permanent loan.
So when's that date start and the hard date end?
That starts at the start of construction, and I believe you'll see there's penalties for not meeting the construction conversion 24 months after the start of construction.
So other than the penalties, if you don't meet it, that hard date, like I kept seeing over and over
Sure.
again in there, are they not going to finance your mortgage portion of it?
No, I believe they do. They provide many months of penalty, unfortunately, but they do provide a fee for the first 3 months and a fee for other months. Clearly, their expectation is the construction will get complete and will meet the stabilization requirements of having occupancy, which is really the key measure of conversion. Obviously, is a certificate of occupancy, but it's meeting what we call stabilized occupancy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Mr. Kirk, just before you leave, I just want to wrap up here real quickly. I don't think there's anything that you need from the board at this point, but I want to make sure. We have an email from the county attorney that says you've met the commitment. Do you need anything from this board to recognize that, or are you all set to go?
We're set to go. We do anticipate that the state and local fiscal recovery grants and the final grant agreements between the county and we will be presented to the board probably at the last meeting in July. And so that's a stepping stone in terms of getting towards closing. But I think other than that, I think those actions are there. I might mention that the Collier Housing Finance Agency, Mr. Pickworth, is holding as part of the closing for Collier's International a public comment session that's required to be done in any issuance of 501c3 bonds. It's basically a requirement that the public know that money will be used in their jurisdiction. And because he is the local entity, he will hold that public comment period on July 8th. And I believe that traditionally comes to the board after their action.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, based on that, we don't really need to take any action on this. It's just a report that's been made to us.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Kirk.
Steve.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 10B, is a recommendation to direct the county manager or designee to begin the process of preparing the required real property documents and appraisal for conveyance to the state of Florida, the approximately 22 acres of Golden Gate Golf Course property pledged for the construction of a state veterans nursing home in Collier County. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we know that this project everybody is excited about this veterans nursing home, or I guess it's now called the Collier County Long-Term Care Community Project, because it's more than a nursing home. Everyone's very excited about it, and I've been trying to find ways to shorten some of the time frames in terms of getting this project under construction. And one of the steps that needs to be taken is that we need to have a survey and a legal description of the property, and we have to have a deed of that property to a state agency. It's probably the trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund, but whatever the entity is in Tallahassee, they have to have the deed made out to them. And my proposal is for our staff to develop the deed, develop an escrow agreement so that property can be held in escrow by the state agency. And then once funding is available, there's no delay in providing that property. But it would be in escrow similarly to the $30 million that's in escrow, so that the title will not transfer until we get federal approval of a project and we're underway. So there's no risk to the county. That'll be laid out in the escrow agreement. The second part of this is we're telling a story to the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs that the county taxpayers have put $40 million into this project. And the state of Florida has put $10.5 million into it. And in addition, we have a piece of land that's probably worth somewhere around $12 to $14 million. And I think it would be appropriate for us to add that as part of our story in terms of what the taxpayers are contributing for this project. We have in-house appraisers, and so an appraisal can be done, kind of an informal appraisal can be done. It won't cost us anything to do that, and we can just simply add that to our story when we travel to D.C. or communicate with our partners in Tallahassee and in Washington. So, Mr. Chairman, the request is to direct staff to prepare those documents, the deed, the escrow agreement, and the appraisal, so that we have those on hand and we'll have absolutely no delay once we get that federal approval.
Makes good sense.
And
motion to accept that?
Yeah, I'll make that as a motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Second. Any discussion? Good. Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 11A. This is a recommendation to approve an agreement for sale and purchase under the Conservation Collier Land Acquisition Program with one Richard E. Langold Jr. as trustee of the Richard E. Langold Trust, dated April 5th, 2007, for a 2.81 acre parcel at a cost of $58,060, and two, Martha Sardinas for a 2.34 acre parcel at a cost of $53,820, for a total cost not to exceed $115,230, inclusive of closing costs. Ms. Jamie Cook, your Development Review Division Director, is here to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jamie Cook, Director of Development Review, for the record. The two properties before you today are both within the Gore Preserve multi-parcel project. And as you can see on the map on the screen, they are both depicted in blue. And as a note, the 8 Gore Preserve properties that you approved at your last board meeting are shown in pink. As we've discussed this multi-parcel project many times, the Gore Preserve was originally established in 2018 with an acquisition of 171 acres and officially established as a multi-parcel project in 2023. So to date, 36% of the multi-parcel project has been acquired. The habitat is a mix of upland and wetland habitats, including cypress, wetland hardwoods, and pine flatwoods. And it serves as an important connection wildlife corridor for both private and public conservation lands, including the Conservation Collier North Belmead Preserve, the Rural Fringe Mixed-Use District Sending Lands, the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge, 2 stewardship sending areas within the RLSA program, and the Picayune Strand State Forest to the south. It is also adjacent to a wildlife crossing under 75 at the Faka Union Canal. And the preserve area is utilized by a variety of listed species, including the Florida panther, black bear, bonneted bat, and listed wading birds. So the first of the 2 parcels is the Langold Trust parcel, which is located along DeSoto Boulevard. It is 2.81 acres of forested wetlands and soils. It is surrounded on the north, south, and west by existing Conservation Collier properties, and the purchase price is 95% of the appraised value of the property. And the Sardinas parcel is just to the north of that. It is 2.34 acres of mixed wetlands vegetation, and about a quarter of the property is hydric soils. It abuts existing Conservation Collier properties both to the east and to the west. and the purchase price is 100% of the appraised value of the property. So these two parcels would add 5.15 acres to the existing Gore Preserve, and the total purchase price is $115,230. And with that, the recommendation from staff is to acquire both of these parcels at a cost not to exceed that $115,230, and to expand the Gore Preserve. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded for approval. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank y'all.
Talked us right into it.
Item 11B is a recommendation to accept the Collier Area Transit Connect Paratransit Service Report. Ms. Trinity Scott, Transportation Management Services Department Head, is here to present.
Good morning.
Morning.
At our last board meeting, we had multiple public speakers come in to speak with regard to our CAT Connect service, and Commissioner Saunders asked that we bring back a short report on the overall system. I have a few quick slides to go over and provide some information. First off, our CAT Connect system is our door-to-door paratransit system. It's for individuals with permanent or temporary disabilities who cannot utilize our fixed route transit system. For our paratransit programs, we have two. One is what we call our Americans with Disabilities Act program. That is a requirement from our fixed route system. Those are individuals with permanent or temporary disabilities that have a destination within 3/4 of a mile of our fixed route system, and they're unable to utilize that system. We also have our transportation disadvantaged, which are individuals who either reside or have a destination outside of that 3/4 of a mile area. But once again, they must have a temporary or permanent disability to be able to qualify to utilize this system. As you can tell, over the past few years, we've had some increase in our ridership. Going back to 2020, 2021, 2022, certainly we were impacted with COVID, where our ridership did go, was a little lower than what it had previously been. But in 2023, we provided over 108,000 trips. And year to date, through May of this year, we're nearly at 88,000 trips. We're trending to be able to provide a similar number of trips that we did last year. So how the system works is passengers they reserve trips on this system, and they are given a pickup time. And depending upon the length of your trip, that equates to an actual maximum travel time that you can be on our buses. So if your destination is within 9 miles, your travel time could be up to 60 minutes, 9 to 18 miles, up to 75 minutes of travel time, and 18 miles or more could be upwards of 120-minute travel time. Remember, this is a shared ride system. It is not intended to be an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi. We are attempting to try to group these trips to be able to get people from their origin to their destination as efficiently as possible. So I had the team look at our year-to-date travel times. So this is a breakdown based on those parameters that I just provided you. If someone's destination is within 9 miles, our average travel time is approximately 22 minutes per trip. 9 to 18, 42 minutes, and 18 plus miles is 81 minutes. An example of a trip that might be 18 plus miles could be someone coming from the Immokalee area to dialysis within the urban area. So those trips do certainly take longer. We experience that when we drive that just in our personal vehicle as well. So we looked at our peers. This is something that we analyze on an annual basis, both with our fixed route as well as our paratransit service. The team conducts what's called a Transportation Disadvantage Service Plan on an annual basis. We do an annual update. And we have to look at our peers. And our peers are determined based on our system size, our operating environment, if we're urban or rural, Our organizational type. So we're a board of county commissioners. Other areas are maybe small municipalities who are running this service. So we want to have similar peers. And that we also look at if we're a brokerage or not. So Collier Area Transit is a contracted service for us. These are not, our bus drivers are not county employees. So other agencies, those 100+ drivers between fixed route and paratransit are actually county employees. So we try to have, looking at how the systems are operated similarly. So our peers are Bay County, Charlotte, Escambia, Manatee County, Okaloosa, and Pasco County. One of the things that you would note from our peer analysis is that we do run our system with about 7% less vehicles than what our peers do. And we certainly have more miles, but that is because we are the largest county as well. So one of the examples that was given during our public comment was Sarasota County. And Sarasota County has it all together. So Commissioner McDaniel saw me in my vehicle this morning looking up Sarasota County's operating statistics. Their land area is about 610 miles. They have 3 times the number of vehicles that we have, and their cost per mile is more than ours because their operating is much higher. That's the type of service that they provide. So we are operating, for the most part, within our operating guidelines. I'm not going to tell you that we don't have times when the vehicle is stuck in traffic, if a vehicle breaks down, if a vehicle gets into an accident, those things happen. But we certainly do our best to be able to optimize that service and do that hot wash afterwards to figure out what went wrong and how we can prevent it in the future. But let's talk about some things that when we started looking at the system as a whole over the past year, some of the things where we were getting complaints was our phone system. We were having a tremendous amount of people who were sitting on hold for an extended period of time, or they were abandoning calls. So we've really focused over the past year on our telephone system and our customer feedback. And these are some of our statistics that we're showing. So on our customer service lines, between May of last year and this year, we went from an average queue time of nearly 2 minutes to 35 seconds. That was a 69% improvement. And the same with abandoned calls, of calls not answered. We went from 23% down to 7%. So we're continuing to invest in our telephone system and our customer service so that we can improve that customer experience. There's nothing more frustrating for these individuals than when they're trying to call in. They need to make an appointment. They need to get to a necessary medical appointment and to sit on hold for that period of time. So it's something that's very important to us from a customer service standpoint. Other things that Collier Area Transit and CAT Connect offer are travel trainings. So for individuals that are within that ADA corridor, working with them to have them have a comfort level to perhaps have some of their trips be based on the fixed route system. Not every individual is a great candidate for this, but we certainly do try. And for those of you who may come in and out near our transfer station, there is, I'm going to say, a very experienced, mature couple that go to Walmart a couple times a week to get their groceries. They utilize that fixed route system for those services. In looking at them and actually having engaged with them, they would probably qualify for our paratransit service, but they like the latitude that the fixed route system gives them without having to call and schedule that trip. We're also working with our vendor, our contracted vendor for our routing software. We utilize a software that optimizes our trips, and so we are continually working with them to, when we have issues where they're able to make modifications to the parameters to better route those trips. One of the things that we've been doing is making some modifications to those first trips in the morning, so making sure that we're going out and starting on the right foot, if you will, in the morning. So our vendor's been working very closely with us, and I know that our team just recently had another meeting with them to continually to optimize that. So our opportunities for improvements are absolutely, we want to continue that coordination with our software provider. We're also merging our fixed route and paratransit dispatch to increase our operational efficiency. This allows multiple individuals to be doing similar jobs, you have backup, et cetera. Hiring 11 operators to cover our current vacancies. Once again, this is a contracted vendor. I met with the vendor, Brian Wells, and I, the Director of Public Transit and Neighborhood Enhancement, met with the general manager for our vendor to discuss our vacancies. They have hired all 11 individuals. As you can imagine, the drivers for our paratransit system go through a very rigorous training process. We don't hire them and the next day put them out with a vulnerable population. They are graduating 4 drivers this week, and the other 7 are in training and will be graduating from the training program over the next few weeks, which will bring them to fully staffed as far as the drivers go. We will continue to coordinate with our local agencies to address concerns. And I'll give an example for Lighthouse. In my meeting with the general manager, one of the things that they noted is sometimes the agencies have programs that end every half an hour. And so passengers will schedule a trip every half an hour, which means we have a parade of buses. So when we start seeing those things and we start seeing how we might be able to run more efficiently and also have a better passenger experience, we work with those agencies to try to consolidate those end times and also to have them end in different times. This service provides a lot of dialysis trips. So dialysis patients go early in the morning, they get picked up at noontime, and then you have a second, usually group of folks who are going to dialysis. So if we can get some of these agency programs to end at different times in the day to where it's not all during those peak times, those are things that we will work with them on. Other transportation options that our passengers have are neighbors, family, and friends, and we saw that last week with the individuals who came. They came with their neighbors and their family members. And there are private providers, Naples Taxi, Uber, Lyft, for example. There's also a nonprofit volunteer driver program for disabled veterans that we will work with as well. In addition, there are van service opportunities for the agencies. And we are actually working with multiple agencies right now where the agency can establish a coordinated agreement with Collier Area Transit. And what that does is by them reporting their statistics to us, it opens up their opportunity to be able to qualify for federal grants, to be able to purchase vans, to be able to provide their own service. And I'll use the United Cerebral Palsy here in Collier County. We have worked with them for many, many, many years. They have multiple vehicles, and they provide their own transportation. So their trips are not intermingled with ours, and so they're able to give a more direct experience to their clients. So we're going to be working with the Lighthouse to see if that's an option for them. The Lighthouse of Lee County does do that, so it's not unheard of. I also asked our team to pull the specific statistics for the Lighthouse of Collier, and I just asked them to go back the last 3 months to look at our travel statistics that we had for the group. And we provided over 800 trips to Lighthouse, to or from Lighthouse over the past 3 months. Our on-time performance for our drop-off was 88%, and our pickup was 78%. The slides here show our average travel time with regard compared to what our max travel time. We did have 2 passengers that were on the vehicle more than 30 minutes beyond what their threshold is. And anytime those type of things happen, we go back and we take a look at that. And in both of those instances, the vehicles had been stuck in traffic. So, if Immokalee Road is shut down because there's an accident, there's a fatality, and FHP has it shut down, our buses are stuck in that same traffic. And so sometimes we can't help those type of situations, and those are the times when we're all getting phone calls going, it took me 3 hours to get home. This impacts this system as well. But certainly we do our best, and we try to communicate that to caregivers as much as we can, as far as if we're stuck in traffic, we're trying to get that message out.
Well, your on-time performance is better than American Airlines.
We don't give peanuts, though. So with that, I thank you, and what we're asking today is just that you accept our report. And I don't know if we have any public comment or not.
Go ahead.
Would you like that now, sir?
Do it, then we'll go to Commissioner LaCastro.
Your speaker is John DeMarco.
Right here. Good morning, everyone. My name is John DeMarco, resident of Naples for 45 years. I'm also the chair of the Collier Area Transit Advisory Board, and I'm here to speak about the paratransit. The paratransit is a very necessary thing for the visually impaired and blind and disabled. I've tremendously used it. I've never had any problem with delays on it. As mentioned in the speech before me, there is situations with traffic, and sometimes you get held up, and it takes a little more time. But remember, it's a service that's there for us, and we really enjoy the service, and we need the service. Also, the public transportation system here is fantastic. I looked into that, and I actually looked into the bus stop, considering the lighthouse on Horseshoe, and it's approximately 13 minutes from the lighthouse. Now, the biggest thing in our OEM training with a cane, of course, or a guide dog, which I have a guide dog, by the way, he's retired now, so I'll be looking forward to get a new one, is that part of the training is to teach us how to navigate to certain points. So if anybody's waiting that long for a power bus to pick them up at the lighthouse, maybe the OEM instructors need to show them the way to the route, which is 13 minutes away. Now, I understand it gets pretty hot here in the summertime, and I understand the community is an older community. And as the community grows and gets older, we're really going to need this service more than anything. The two highlights that I really want to tell everyone about is what happened after Irma. Well, we lost the power. We had about 3 feet of water in Naples. But guess what? The power bus was there to take us to shelters. The drivers weathered through the storms and came to get us and take us to shelters. In Irma, after the storm, they contacted us through emergency management services and offered us rides to shelters to make sure that the disabled and visually impaired were all safe. Also, the public transportation, I believe, was the first system to be running back after Irma. So we all had a chance to go to Publix. I just want to tell you the importance of this. CAT bus is entirely a thing that we really need in Collier County, and we should look up to, because we're going to get more traffic, we're going to get more people, and they're going to come, and the traffic jams are going to come here, and the bus system is going to be the way to travel eventually. We offer beach buses and buses to every location. I just want to urge the board and tell everybody how much I've enjoyed the Power Bus, and thank you for letting me speak. Have a great day.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
That was our only speaker, sir.
Mr. LaCastro.
Trinity, we got some good feedback, obviously, at our last meeting, but one of the things that I heard, we all heard from one citizen, and I'm probably paraphrasing, but they gave this example of they get on the bus, and that's point A. They have to go to point B, but they watch the bus drive by point B and drop everybody off at point G, and then 40 minutes later, the bus comes back to point B. In your analysis, have you seen that we have, a couple of routes that are a bit convoluted, or their example has some reasoning behind it where it's not actually as they presented, although they were pretty crystal clear that they felt they spent too much time on the bus. They watched the bus drive right by their location only to hit a whole bunch of further locations, and then the bus had to come back to their stop. What's happening there?
So remember, with this system, it is not the same route that is run every single day. That route, it changes every single run that it does. So I'll give an example. If a driver's coming here to the government center to say pick up Commissioner Kowal and Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Hall has a drop-off time, let's just say at 2:30, and Commissioner Kowal has a drop-off time at 3 o'clock. Commissioner Kowal actually lives closer. It is possible that instead of going into a gated community and getting off route, that the system would route to go up to drop off Commissioner Hall first to meet his drop-off time, and then come back and drop off Commissioner Kowal. that is also, it's not only, it's looking at the parameters that the system allows. The system allows for a passenger to be on the vehicle up to 60 minutes. It's also about positioning that vehicle for its next pickup. So certainly if there's a pickup that's at 3 o'clock near where Commissioner Kowal wants to be picked up or dropped off at, we want to position that vehicle. So it is, there's a lot of parameters, and that's why we use the scheduling software, because back in the day we used to do all this by hand, and that's a lot. And also things happen. The other thing with this new system that we have is that it does optimize throughout the day. So if a particular driver starts getting behind, and when I say that they're getting behind, it could be due to traffic, it could be due to getting someone out. I mean, you have to understand the population that we're dealing with. These are very vulnerable individuals, and they might take some time to get out to the vehicle and get loaded in, particularly if they're wheelchairs and all that. So if the system starts seeing that we're falling behind, it will re-optimize and will redistribute the trips throughout the day.
Is there a way to communicate that better to the riders? Because when that citizen gave feedback, their expectation was they got on the bus, their point B is 6 miles away. The bus drove 30 miles all over the place and then went back, and they felt like they were sitting on the bus, and they weren't, that wasn't their expectation. Is there a way to, because your example is perfect as to how you use the commissioners as an example, that does happen. But if the customer doesn't know that, we look, and in their mind, we look stupid. We look like, we just drove by their stop. Why didn't the bus just stop and let them off?
We actually, in at least, I know of at least on one of the instances there, we had that exact same communication with the passenger. Unfortunately, and I can appreciate they've had a long day at their program and they just want to get home. And so they want to be able to get home as fast as they think that they should. But it is a shared system. And like I said, from the travel times, we do our best to try to keep those travel times at a minimum, but sometimes we can't.
Yeah, and I know the other suggestion was sometimes customers are on a bus, passengers are on a bus, the bus isn't full, and so one of the suggestions was, scrap a lot of the big buses and just get a whole fleet of SUVs, and if you really work the algorithm, and that's a lot more drivers, it doesn't give us a lot of flexibility, and so I know you're finding the sweet spot, and we do have smaller vehicles as well, and so just making sure that we use those to the best of our ability. But somebody came to the podium and said, if we had a lot more of those smaller vehicles, it would be much more efficient, but that also it gives some budget challenges as well.
Well, so a portion of our system we do complete utilizing some vehicles from our vendor.
Yeah.
And they've actually brought in minivans, which has been the discussion from several of our passengers. So some of the concerns that we're having with minivans, and we're seeing this, we have a very large area. A minivan that you go by at the local dealership does not have the chassis and transmission to withstand the wear and tear on the vehicles that we put on these every single day. So from a cost comparison standpoint, they are spending a lot more time in the shop. And so that means now we're down a vehicle. And so it's something that we are working with. And we also reached out to other transit systems here in the state and said, hey, how are these things working for you? And pretty much overwhelmingly, we're getting the same response from them. They do work, for your ambulatory individuals, being able to get them on the bus and move them along. But from a wear and tear and a vehicle operation standpoint, they do present some challenges. But we're going to continue to be working through those items.
Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you. Just a couple points. I know you've got routing software. I don't know if that is fairly new, if that can be upgraded. But from some of the discussion we had, it just seemed like the routing was really the difficult part. So what's your comment in terms of the routing program you have? Is that something that needs to be upgraded?
No, actually, this is a fairly new routing system that we have brought on probably in the last year and a half, 2 years. And so we're continuing to work within it. Some of the thing that this new routing system does that our old routing system does not is provide updates to passengers when the vehicle is approaching or going to be there within a period of time. So those were some of the things from from the passenger feedback in the past, that was something that they desired, to know that the bus was coming in. So it's all connected with our vehicle locators, and can do that. The challenges that we have is during season, our ridership goes up tremendously, and so trying to get sometimes upwards of 600 vehicles, 600 trips per day on the vehicles that we have can be a challenge. And so those are things. But like I said, we're continuing to work with the vendor to optimize that system more and more. I think the software is working, but remember, the software is based on the parameters that we put into it, and so we allow for a passenger time of X number, and that's our adopted level of service that we're providing. So the bus is trying to optimize the efficiency of the overall system as well to keep your operating costs down.
Second comment, I understand that if you bought a van from the local Chevy dealer, that it's not really set up for that type of travel. However, I'm sure you could get vans that are made for that. They obviously would be more expensive, but so I think that might be part of the solution, is looking for smaller vehicles that are made for this type of transit, for heavy use, so you don't have to worry about them wearing out. And that's just a thought. I'm sure there are manufacturers that will produce whatever you need. This was a very thorough report. And as I'm listening to you, my thought was, it was 2 weeks ago when this was requested, and you put together a report that is pretty very thorough and really very informative. I don't know how you do everything that you do, but I appreciate
I have a great
it.
team.
All right, well, great. Your team did a great job on this, so thank you.
Sir.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, you brought up and Commissioner Saunders brought up the idea or the suggestion of alternative vehicles other than the big buses. But I think it's also as important to educate the community that this isn't a point-to-point service. It's not an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi. And I have often thought, could it be more cost-effective for us to provide subsidization to riders on a more point-to-point basis? Has there any exploration been going on with regard to that?
Yes, we actually, probably about a year and a half ago, we received a grant to be able to provide same-day trips, but through an Uber or Lyft type process on demand. We'll tell you, we struggled to be able to get a vendor. Uber and Lyft aren't held to the same federal requirements that the public transit system is. So we struggled to find a vendor to be able to provide that service. We did find a vendor to provide that service that provided that more direct door-to-door service. We ran that service for 6 to 9 months. We asked the vendor to extend it because we did have a little bit more grant dollars to be able to expend, and the vendor said, thanks, but no thanks. We can't make it work from an operational standpoint, from a dollars and cents standpoint. So it's very difficult to be able to do that. So to be able to do that subsidy, we have to be able to do that with individuals who can meet those state and federal guidelines that we have, because we would be utilizing grant dollars for that. So,
well, are there any income verifications done for the ridership, the people that use it, that potentially may be able to pay a little bit more than what our typical fee is to be able to help subsidize that and shorten those timeframes down?
So for our ADA passengers, there is no required income verification. We do, typically for ADA passengers, it's $3 per way. There is a provision that if they would like to provide their income, they can qualify for a reduced fare, and that is looking at their income based on poverty levels. For our paratransit or transportation disadvantaged service, that yes, it has income verification, and depending upon those their income, their fare each way is either $1, $3, or $4. So $4 is the max. What you will note in my budget discussion that we had that we will be updating our fare policy. We're going to be going into a fare study over the next year, and I anticipate looking at particularly the paratransit fares as well to see if there is a closer to an unsubsidized rate, if you will, or a broader span for our fares for the transportation disadvantaged service.
Well, in the thought process as we're going through that, maybe an alternative to what's in fact transpiring is a premium service where someone who can afford to pay more than $3 or $4 per trip could subscribe to a premium service and receive maybe an enhanced opportunity. And that might be in conjunction with, like what Commissioner Saunders was saying. I know my father she was my stepmom, but they were married well after I was grown. So, but she was paralyzed. She had a stroke and she was paralyzed, and he actually bought a minivan that was equipped to be able to allow her wheelchair to wheel up in, and took out the passenger seat, and it was a couple of seatbelt straps, and she was put in. So just exploration in those regards with those specialized equipments. It was quite some time ago that he actually bought the van, but I want to say it was $110,000, $120,000 set up. So it had an automatic door, and the shocks went down, and the ramp automatically came out. So
Our 12 passenger buses that you just approved during the last meeting are about $160,000. So.
okay. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner Saunders. Somebody, you writing that down? That was an extremely thorough report. I appreciate you and your staff for doing what you did.
We need a motion.
If we could
Get a motion to approve the update.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded for the update. All in favor say aye. Aye. So moved. Are you good to go? Okay. We'll continue.
All right. That brings us to item 15, Staff and Commission General Communications. Item 15A is public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda by individuals not already heard during previous public comments in this meeting.
We have no one.
All right. Item 15B is staff project updates. And while we don't have any, I was going to just give you a quick update, Commissioner Saunders, on the air purifiers. Let me just go back to my email. We got some news from Dan Summers. As of last week, from Mr. Summers, they had 5 deliveries scheduled for the donated air cleaners. David Lawrence, St. Matthew's House Humane Society, YMCA of Naples, YMCA of Marco. Also Glades County for their special needs shelter. They have more deliveries in the queue as they await the completion of their paperwork. And we have, he's holding a couple of units for us for our evacuation shelters, and also for DAS once we are through some of the painting and other things that are going on over there. So just wanted to give you that.
Do you know how many units are left?
No, but I'll get an update from Mr. Summers and come back to you with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. With that is all I have. County Attorney.
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Good morning, sir. I have 2 points, and I'll be brief. Last week, during our budget hearing, I think it was Chief Smith was here. We were talking about our public gun range out off of Old Gray Road, and I received another call from the Garden. Chief suggested that inmate labor might be utilized in order to effectuate the plantings and irrigation and all. Those plants are in fact available, so I would like to not have to be the one driving the bus to go pick them up and orchestrate that. So if we could, I would like to have that moving forward. Those plants are being contributed. I think Davenport Nursery is the one that has the plantings to be contributed to us for free. So I just want to make sure that staff is grabbing onto that and coordinating with the Sheriff's Department to be able to get those plantings in.
Yes, sir. We'll reach out to Chief Smith today, and if inmate labor is not a possibility, we'll deal with it with our folks that are used to doing that type of work.
Outstanding. Number two, though I really appreciate the expeditious timing with regard to our meeting today, I don't want to fetter away the summer months in our board schedule. We are deep into a budget process. We had a budget workshop last week. The company that we engaged to assist us with our priority budgeting processes had an enormous amount of information that it was a first blush for me last week at our workshop. And so I would suggest that we schedule them and or some form or format with regard to the upcoming budget and the budget policy that the board put out in relationship to the budgets that have been put forth by our departments, and spend some time this summer. We've got 4 more meetings. I know we're going to consume a little bit in July for the setting of the millage rate, but I would really like to engage with our consultant. He represented that there was going to be a more formalized report. I asked some questions. We all know it's nice to say that there's an opportunity for reallocation and or new monies, but without definition of those, when you're reallocating funding, something's getting moved over here and off the priority list. So, and on to a different priority list. So my suggestion would be, if it meets with the will of the board, that we utilize these meetings in the summer months to become more educated and have more input with regard to our upcoming budget meetings in September. That's all.
Mr. LaCastro.
Okay. A few things. Wanted to give a positive shout out to the Paradise Coast team and FC Naples on the 15th of June. They released the crest and the colors and whatnot. So I think, they're off to a really great start. We have the Everblades, our triple championship team. Last night, the Panthers won. Panthers won in Game 7, and FC Football Club Naples had, even in a day on the 15th when the weather wasn't so great, we had a great turnout, and Adrian and his team and Roberto and his team and everybody that came together. We had a lot of county staff out there. It was a really good start. So I know we're all really excited and encouraged, and it was obvious they put a lot of thought into the crest and colors. I mean, I think all of us got nothing but rave reviews from the community, so that was really well done. One of the things I've said is if any of us chair a committee, if something major is talked about it at your subcommittee meetings, bring it back to this board. So we had a TDC meeting, and 2 things I just want you to know that we talked about aggressively was 4th of July trash. Usually on the 5th of July, we all get emails saying how garbage cans were overflowing and we didn't have quick enough pickups. And it's always a challenge. So I don't think we're going to get a million thank you notes after every Memorial Day or 4th of July, but we're also not sitting on our hands. So I'll just give you the abridged version. There was a deep discussion because we did have a lot of the right people there that take care of our beaches and whatnot that come to the TDC meetings, and we wanted to make sure the 4th of July wasn't overlooked, and it's not. And there's a good plan in place, as there always is, but we learn from every holiday. The second thing that I had asked was, there's a major plan for a larger Paradise Coast sign to be put on 951. That's still moving forward. There's an artist rendering, and there's some permitting involved, and so I don't want to give a specific date, because actually when I met with Trinity, she connected some other dots that are, we don't want to install this giant sign, and then if there's a stoplight or the road's being widened, then the sign has to be removed, because we put the cart before the horse. But it's in play. The right people are working it with the right timing. So those were 2 TDC takeaways. And then, we talked a little bit about July 6th. There's a big, a drone show that's going to be at Paradise Coast. And one of the things that I had said is the difference between that July 6th show and our 4th of July show last year. If you remember, last year on the 4th of July, there was still plenty of room in the stadium, but we sort of maxed out on parking spots. And that, we don't normally have events that fill the stadium, so it's sort of a little bit of an anomaly, but it wasn't lost on us, and there's a lot of lessons learned. The difference between that and the event we're going to have on the 6th is on the 6th, that's the only game in town. So on the 4th, you had fireworks on Marco, you had fireworks in Naples, you had fireworks other places. So Paradise Coast was one of several options. Saturday, July 6th, I think we're going to have a lot of people descend on the sports complex. So we talked a little bit about making sure that we have traffic being directed in the right way. But I would just say to the commissioners, if between now and then you're talking to your constituents or you're sending out a newsletter, some things that were stressed at the TDC meeting is please encourage people to carpool. I mean, one of the things Paradise Coast team said is that for a lot of big events, they see these cars come in, in a big long line with, one person in each car, and they're all together, driving their own vehicle. And that's okay if we have a lacrosse tournament with 300 people, but on July 6th, that won't cut it. Trinity and I spoke yesterday, and a few people at the TDC meeting said, how about the cat buses, and why don't we run shuttles? And there might be something magical. She's gonna look into a couple things, but there's also some challenges, which is, okay, where do you have these people pre-park? You can't just say, oh, everybody park in the Walmart parking lot and we'll pick you up. Walmart doesn't love that very much. But there might be some options. But there's several improvements that are going to be put in play for the 6th. But please remind people, carpool, get there early because cars will move slow into the parking lot no matter how many we have out on the streets from our sheriff's office, and get a seat early, and there's a lot being done to maximize that. And let's see. Oh, and then I'll just plant the seed with y'all. Ed and I went to basically sort of had a mini town hall meeting at Port of the Islands. Port of the Islands, just as a reminder, if you drive out towards Everglades City, before you hit Everglades City, there's another major community there. Y'all remember that's where the Haunted House Hotel was for many years that, we tore down a few years ago. But they have a unique community there where they have community leaders. They have a CID, which is not unlike some other communities, but they have all new officers. They've inherited some things that are a bit dusty and a little convoluted. Ed and I went out there, and we also had a Zoom call with them a few weeks ago, and Amy was on the call, and we had senior leadership. We're really working hard to help this new leadership team, and the reason I just plant that seed here is if you're not familiar with Port of the Islands, you will be, because I believe several things are going to come to us at some point for a vote, either support or non-support or something in the middle, but we're working really hard to address some dusty, neglected things out there, and doing it with new community leaders that have stepped forward that I'm really encouraged by. They realize that they have a lot on their plate. They're not unlike the municipalities we have with Everglades City, City of Marco, and City of Naples, where way back when their developer made some command decisions to keep responsibility of quite a few things, utilities and roads and beautification and this and that. Now you're all the way down the road, and some of those things are quite a bit dusty and dated. And it's easy to say, well, we want to hand the keys to the county and just have them take over everything and fix it for us. And Ed and I went out there and basically said that's not realistic. But you can't give us the keys to a car that doesn't run and expect us to give you back a Mercedes. But there are some answers in between, and we are really working hard with them. So I just wanted to mention that. You'll start to see at some point some Port of the Islands discussion, we're going to try to find some solutions as best we can that make the most sense. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kowal.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one item I want to bring up. We've been dealing a lot with issues over at the DAS facilities. Staff has done an incredible job getting things back in order there and taking care of the animals. But it's been brought to our attention really recently, especially with the cat breeding season and the number of cats that are out that are being picked up, that the real solution to our problem in terms of overcrowding at our facilities is trying to prevent the proliferation of animals in the first place. And I've talked to several people. We have a couple ordinances on the books that apparently are not effective in controlling that. One of them would be our hobby breeders ordinance. From things I've been told and seen, there are situations where a lot of animals are just simply let loose. Ultimately, they wind up in our shelter. And a lot of that is coming from some of the hobby breeders that are just not regulated. It's not a very popular issue to bring up in terms of trying to deal with it because it's a complicated subject. But I'd like our staff, I'd like the board to direct our staff to take a look at our regulatory scheme in terms of hobby breeders, in terms of the domestic animal folks that are abusers, all of our enforcement mechanism, but in particular the hobby breeders, and see if we can get a handle on beefing up our ordinances and making sure that we're addressing the real cause of the problem, which is too many animals are out stray and they're not spayed or neutered. And I think we need to look at our regulatory scheme. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have our with a nod of the heads, if the board is supportive, for staff to really look into everything that we are doing in terms of enforcement to beef up our operations.
I think it's a great idea. And just on that note, I mean, I think there's some exploration going on with and didn't we have an agenda item today talking about the fee structure and the waiver of those fees to incentivize, for a period of time, to incentivize people to participate in spade and neutering, so that can all fly in the same path. I hope that we'll get some data with regard to people that have chosen to participate with the fee waiver process.
Yes, sir. So that is the intent, is to observe how that works here during these summer months, and then come back to you with adjustments. We've got some ideas, but of course we need to see what kind of information we can get and glean from this. And as far as Commissioner Saunders, yes, absolutely. This has been a topic on and off now for the last several years. There's a lot of people very passionate about this that have made recommendations. So we'll go back to the ordinances along with our code enforcement folks who are newly involved and look at all of this.
All right. I appreciate that. If you could sort of report back in a few weeks, just
yes, sir,
kind of where we might want to start making some
yes,
improvements, that would be helpful.
Yep. And for anybody listening, if you want to foster kittens, that's a real need that we have right now. We have a lot of kittens in the shelter, and
there are a lot of young folks in the audience that have been sitting there quietly. They look like they would like to have a cat to take home with them. So,
yep.
Everybody who wants a cat, raise their hand. We'll have them delivered right now.
Or even more than one cat.
Yep.
No takers.
The nice part about foster is that the county still continues to pay for the food and the veterinary care. We're just looking for them to be in a temporary placement till they get older and are able to be adopted. So anyway, just a shout out to anybody and everybody watching. You could take some cats to your mom.
Yeah, no. She has one. I have two.
Okay. No. Thank you.
Senate? I have had the opportunity to talk to Chris Fabian with ResourceX, and he needs another 10 days to 2 weeks to come out with, he wants to add to his report.
Yeah.
And so with that, I've talked to senior staff. We don't have any major items coming down the pike. No, there's no land uses coming. And so what I want to propose is us to skip the July 23rd meeting. That'd give Chris time to come back with all, he's going to focus on two different areas. He's going to focus on the low cost, high impact, and the low cost, low impact areas of the grid. Remember the grid that he had? Yes. And there was, I don't know how many programs were included in each grid, but those are the first things that he's going to bring back to staff. The reason why I say let's consider this is because that's going to give staff, once the report hits, that's going to give the directors, that's going to give them time to implement what changes that they may be able to meet so that they can bring those back to us on, we would have August the 13th, we would have August the 27th to really dive in with those two, with that report. And then we'd be prepared for our September 5th budget hearing. the major thing that we're going to do the next meeting is we're going to set the maximum millage rate. And I'm hopeful by that time we would have that report. And I'm not saying that we're going to take off. We're going to be working. We're going to be I'll be involved with staff. I'll be involved in this budget process. I'm just saying, let's just don't meet that day. It takes a lot of, we're going to be less than a 2-hour meeting. And it takes a lot of preparation and a lot of time away from other things to do this. And I'm not saying today's meeting wasn't productive. It was. But I'm just going to propose that we skip the July 23rd meeting to allow staff so that they can get with us. They're going to meet with us individually. We can dive into this budget process. I'm going to say I'm excited about it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can decide that's going to be wise and what we don't need to decide on as well. So, what are y'all's thoughts about coming after July the 9th, just skipping the 23rd meeting?
You know, I think one of the things that we always said about meeting in the summer is you as the chair and any of us had the latitude to say, look at the agenda and say, you know, the juice ain't worth the squeeze, you know, for this meeting. So we have it on the calendar, and it's, we thought, the majority of us thought it was smarter to have the meetings on the calendar, and it's easier to take it off than to say, oh my God, we're on vacation over the summer, but oh, we need to have a quick throw together meeting because Resource X has something important to tell us or another department. So, you know, I think if that's the big heavy lifting thing for that meeting, and nothing between now and then that is time sensitive pops up, certainly is something that we talked about being able to have the latitude to do if we saw an advantage to, you know, skipping over a meeting for a particular reason.
My question, and this, I haven't seen it come up, is there was a discussion about the annual meetings with the 2 CRAs, and I had suggested we do that on one of our board meetings as well, since we're all here and everything's set up for that. Has that been put on the schedule yet?
It has not been. I actually just asked the staff to reach out to see what our date, trying to herd the 2 CRAs for a date, but that has not been placed on the calendar yet.
Henceforth, maybe before we pull the trigger and don't have the 23rd meeting or announce it now that we're not, I'm okay with that, but I would rather, if Resource X's report's going to be ready within the next 10, 12 days, what's your rationale for putting them off until August to give staff a minute to digest that report?
Oh, well, yeah, I didn't want to put Resource X off. When the report comes, I wanted to give staff the opportunity to get their plans together to bring to us for major implementation or major decision. And I think that once that report comes, I'm definitely going to dive in. I'll be personally involved with meeting with the division heads and the directors to make sure that their plans are going according to the I'm going to call it the programs that Resource X brings forward. And I'm not saying that we're going to look at all of them, but I want to be instrumental. So we're going to be working. I'm just saying, let's just not meet as a board until we can get some direction from that report to the staff and hear their plans and the way that they would like to implement that so that we can make good decisions. We don't have to decide today. We can decide on July the 9th.
Yeah, I was just thinking, let's before we pull the trigger on the 23rd, I'm okay I'm okay with that if we want to, but I'd really like for us to get the CRA annual meetings scheduled so that those folks can come and address the issues of the communities, both Immokalee and Bayshore.
Is there a possibility to get that on the 9th?
I'll find out today and get back with you.
Perfect. I mean, that'd be perfect timing.
Right. We just don't have that data yet. And my thought to you, Mr. Chair, is, again, a lot of this, we all know a lot of this budgeting process is staff-driven, but they're going to require a lot of input from us because of the adjustments in the vision statement, mission statement, business plan, and budget priorities are going to require a lot of input from us. And so that was why I was leaning up on scheduling Resource X to be here and go through those actual finished documents. I saw him taking notes like there was no tomorrow last week.
Like he was.
So I'm just hesitant on pulling off of an actual meeting time where and I know staff needs a minute to digest and look at the proposals that Resource X is putting forth, but I said it yesterday when I was talking with senior staff. Reallocation sounds like a nice thing. New funding sounds like a nice thing, but those are fee structures that are coming from somewhere else, and reallocation is reappropriation of budget monies. You know, I think Amy used Ms. Patterson used the example yesterday, you know, reprioritizing TDT funding over to support beach parks would then free up general fund money. That's a nice reallocation that could really work. And then we would have the decision-making power to maneuver those reallocation funds. But I don't know. His spread was 87 million to 157 million of reallocation and new revenues. I really need to see what all that is encompassed within those numbers. So I'm just hesitant on coming off of our normal board schedule at this particular juncture, just because of the enormous amount of time that this is going to take.
Nope, I totally agree, and I think that we're going to need some time. Also in the report, we're looking at efficiencies, we're looking at redundancies, we're looking at things that are low impact, high cost. I mean, they don't really impact us very much, but they're costing us a lot of money. So we need to make the decisions, do we need to continue those things or do we not? And so what I love about Resource X is it's non-emotional, it's data-driven. So when we get the data and we let staff have the data, then they can say, and I enjoyed the buy-in from Mr. Johnson. I mean, he embraced the process, Mr. Finn embraced the process, and I know the county manager embraces the process, and as the speed of the group is determined by the speed of the leadership. And so I think with that, we'll see some positive things coming to us, some realistic things, you know, some things that yes, we probably can do without that, or no, we have to have that. Those are the things that I think that can come forward to us from that report. And if we come back on August the 13th, we'd have August the 13th and August the 27th all day long to hash those things out, instead of, you know, getting all dressed up and practice for the dance and we're done in 2 hours. So this is just my comment. We can decide on that next meeting, and I'm glad to have some other discussion about it. But if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.